What is up, all you rock and roll kids in America and all across this big blue marble we call Earth? It is July the 4th, 2025. It is Independence Day in the United States. Not trying to alienate any other country, but since we record in the USA, happy 4th of July to everybody who celebrates. And why aren't you? You should be. Let's stop with the divisiveness and let's come together on this day. And we, of course, have come together to talk about rock and roll, classic rock, the music that we know and we love and we obsess about. Yes, it is time for the latest and greatest episode of The Fortress of Rock, episode 201. As I mentioned, on the 4th of July, 2025. I hope you have fun tonight. We're recording a little bit early in case there are festivities I want to partake in. And also, we just want to avoid all the M80s and all the fireworks going off while we're trying to record here. You know, we don't need the distraction outside the studio here, outside the fortress. So we're knocking this out just a few hours earlier than normal, which is good for you. That means you'll probably get it a few hours earlier than normal on this particular Friday night. Let us start off as always with News of the World, our tribute to the late, great Freddie Mercury and Queen. Now, the good news is we have no significant deaths, passings to report, which is always a positive, because we've talked about this as we all get older. We cannot escape time. We cannot escape the Grim Reaper. But luckily, this week has been clean on that slate in that regard. So, hopefully much better things to report, although we do have a couple health issues coming up. Let's start off with an update on the Scorpions biopic called Wind of Change. Now, this sucker seems like it got fast-tracked because they are still talking about releasing it at some point here before the end of 2025. They did report this past week the cast has now been set and filming has begun. But usually I would think you need a little more time for post-production, for editing, all that good stuff. So we will see what the end product ends up looking like. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Wind of Change, the song itself. I understand its importance, and I'm not 100% sure I'm buying into the premise behind this movie where it is centering around that particular song. I would have preferred a straight biopic, and maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe it's going to be a little bit more of a look back at the birth and the rise of the Scorpions and not just this one little segment of their career. Now, when I mentioned the cast has been set, I don't know any of these younger actors, and I wouldn't expect you guys to either. The one name that did pop, he will be playing their manager, Doc McGee, and we've talked about Doc McGee in the past and his checkered life. Busted on a major drug issue. I think we brought that up when we discussed the Bon Jovi biopic a couple years ago on Disney Plus. But Dominic West will play Doc McGee. Dominic West, you might know from, now for me personally, because I'm a comic book geek, he played Jigsaw in Punisher Warzone, but most people will know him from The Wire. And if you have never seen The Wire, you need to watch The Wire now. It is, and I'm not kidding, it is one of the greatest TV shows of all time. Ran for, I believe, 5 seasons on HBO. Every season covered a different segment of crime and corruption in Baltimore. It's phenomenal. The last season people have an issue with. It didn't bother me. Tremendous, tremendous show. So if you have HBO Max, I would get on there and knock out The Wire as soon as possible. And then, of course, you will see Dominic West playing one of the major characters, and he again is playing Doc McGee, the Scorpions manager, in Wind of Change. Now, we do have some new music to report on. A lot of discussion here throughout this episode about the Foo Fighters finally, cautiously stepping back into the limelight after a few years of just bad karma. Some out of their control, but most of it within their control. Of course, we know about the death of Taylor Hawkins, and most of us have heard about the indiscretions of Dave Grohl. But for their 30th anniversary, more on that later, they have released a brand new song called Today's Song. So it's great to get some new Foo Fighters music out there. And as I mentioned, we'll talk more and more about the Foo Fighters throughout this podcast episode. Now, you guys know last week I had to report about the deluxe edition, the expanded edition of Balance by Van Halen. And I told you we don't normally do this. We don't normally talk about these expanded editions, these huge box sets. But I will do it again. I will bend the rules again this week because another very, very significant album, this time from the 80s. Of course, Balance came out in the 90s. This album was one of the biggest rock albums of the 80s, and that would be Foreigner's 4. 4 is getting the deluxe edition treatment. That will be out September the 12th. Now, we kind of hinted about this a few months back, vaguely reported on the rumblings and the rumors about this, because this deluxe edition of 4 does have 5 unreleased songs on it. So hopefully we'll be getting those soon, and we can start reviewing those for you. The deluxe edition of Foreigners 4 will be released in a 5 CD/Blu-ray set. So I believe you're getting 4 CDs, 1 Blu-ray, if I'm not mistaken. There are going to be other editions as well. Digital, of course, you can buy it on digital. They would prefer you to, and I say, do not bend to their will. Let's keep physical media alive. But I understand, a 5-disc set, let's put it that way. A 5-disc set will be very pricey. And I understand it completely if you do not want to indulge. I already own 4 on CD. If I have to, I will buy these unreleased songs piecemeal, burn them onto a CD. It'll save me a ton of money, and I don't need to hear all the alternate versions, the instrumental takes on these songs. This is for the absolute Foreigner fanatic, the completist out there. And while I love Foreigner, I'm not going down that road. Van Halen is about the only band I would do that for. And even then, last week I told you, I'm not buying the deluxe edition, the expanded edition of Balance, just so I can get a hold of some live tracks from Wembley Stadium. And yes, there are live tracks here on this deluxe edition of Foreigners 4 as well. And if we get any more information on it leading up to its release, of course, we will let you know here on the Fortress of Rock. Now, coinciding with this, kind of a nice, neat segue into our concert news of the week. Foreigner, in their new configuration, has announced 8 new December concert dates in the U.S., all on the East Coast of America. And supposedly, do not hold me to this, it's a little fuzzy, but I have read that these 8 December dates on the U.S. East Coast will all feature, for at least a few songs, Lou Gramm. We know Lou Gramm has been slowly coming back into the fold, has made peace, and he's mended fences, obviously with Mick Jones. This again, you read between the lines, and we did this a week or two ago, makes you wonder if Kelly Hansen wasn't a little difficult. Because now with Kelly Hansen out of the picture and Luis Maldonado taking over the lion's share of lead vocals now, Lou Gramm seems to be more than willing to come back in. So once again, if you're on the East Coast of the U.S., 8 December dates just announced for Foreigner, featuring, at least for a few songs every night, Lou Gramm on vocals. Now, unfortunately, the rest of the concert news I've got, for the most part, isn't all that great. I do want to give you a reminder. I don't do this very often, but as you're listening to this, if you're listening to this within the first 24 hours or so of when I drop this episode, keep in mind that July the 5th, Saturday, is Back to the Beginning over the pond in Birmingham, England. This, of course, will feature the final performance by Black Sabbath, among many, many other rock and roll heavyweights. Guns N' Roses will be there. Now, I know Mammoth had to drop out, scheduling conflict there. Many, many other bands. Alice in Chains, I believe, is supposed to appear. Because I don't think, even though they had the issues with Sean Kinney, the health issues with their drummer, I still think they were slated to appear at Back to the Beginning. The reason I bring this up, of course, if you're over in England, you might have a shot at going. If you're not, I believe you can pay to get a live stream ticket and watch it on your computer or smart TV. And again, that's if you're listening as this episode drops on July 4th. I'm not sure how the time change will affect all of this. Probably you need to jump on this right away, given we're talking England as opposed to the U.S. And we, of course, will discuss all the highlights from Back to the Beginning next Friday night, July the 11th, here on the Fortress of Rock. Now, the rest of the concert news, like I said, not all that great. Cancellations all over the place. And even though we did not have any rock and roll deaths, passings this week, still got some health issues from the older rock and rollers. Let's start off with Saxon. Saxon had to cancel 10 dates, 10 concerts over in Europe, July and August, due to emergency surgery for their lead singer, Biff Byford. So if you're a Saxon fan, again, over the pond, overseas, sorry to report, Saxon has canceled 10 shows in Europe due to emergency surgery for their lead singer. Back over here in America, Paul Simon. And you had to wonder about this one because he's been trying to back out of touring and live performances here recently, and then he decided, okay, I guess I'm all right. I feel good enough. Let's go out and do a tour. Well, Paul Simon had to cancel 2 shows in Philadelphia here recently, June the 28th and June the 29th, due to intense back pain. He underwent a minor surgical procedure. The latest report we've got is that he's doing better. He hopes to be able to perform at all the rest of his scheduled shows. However, he had a performance scheduled in California, Long Beach. Be aware that if you have tickets for that show, which was scheduled for July the 7th, that show has been pushed back 1 day. It's still a go, but it will now be July the 8th to give him an extra day to recover and recuperate from this back procedure. And then finally here in News of the World, we jump back over the pond again, still sticking with touring news. Marilyn Manson. I begrudgingly pass along Marilyn Manson news. It's public service. I always say that when it comes to performers, to groups, acts that I don't necessarily listen to or approve of. Sorry, approve of is probably a little too strong. That makes me sound like I'm Tipper Gore and the PRMC. Or the PMRC. I can never remember. Thank God they went away. It's been a long time. I want to say Parents Music Resource Center. So PMRC. But this is the world we live in now. We have to play this delicate balancing act between censorship and politics and protests. I don't like it. I am a free speech advocate. If you don't like what somebody is saying, turn it off, change the channel, walk away. Now, the problem with this in this current climate that we live in is that there are people forcing their views on the rest of the population, where they block traffic and they vandalize and they tear down statues. That's not the way to do things. It's immature, it's criminal, and it's always amazing how those people always wear masks like, yes, criminals. If you're so proud of what you're doing, if you're so proud of what you're protesting and standing up for, don't wear a mask. Why are you afraid? You know why? Because you're a criminal. But again, you have a right to free speech. You don't have the right to threaten violence or to interfere with your free speech in someone else's life. But that being said, online protests, online pressure can be very significant. And in the case of Marilyn Manson, online protests have led to the cancellation of the first show on his European tour. Marilyn Manson was scheduled to perform October the 29th at the Brighton Center in the United Kingdom. That show has now been canceled due to, as I mentioned, online protests. I believe a politician over in England got involved. That's fine. That I don't like it. I think it's censorship in a different form, a different variety, but it's still censorship. But as long as you're not physically intimidating people, as long as you're not, again, blocking traffic, setting cars on fire, threatening people's lives, you can go online and say, I don't want Marilyn Manson playing in my town. I don't want Marilyn Manson playing in my city. And if somebody eventually picks up on it, somebody in a seat of power, like a government official, and they decide that, yeah, I agree with you, and more people step up to back you, that's what the power of free speech should do. But again, physical acts of violence, physical acts that impede and damage other people's lives are not free speech. That is not free speech. That is not a peaceful protest. And those people should be arrested, locked up, thrown in jail, and pay a penalty for thinking in their arrogance that they can interfere in other people's lives physically. So if there's a further update here with Marilyn Manson, we'll see if the rest of the European tour goes on as scheduled. But once again, the first date, the kickoff show on October the 29th over in the United Kingdom, that has been canceled. And that's going to do it for News of the World here on the Fortress of Rock. And I do try to stay out of politics as much as I can. I seem like I say that every other week. But here's the thing. If the music world, if the world of rock and roll is going to keep pulling politics in, I'm going to have to address it. And I'm going to have to give you my 2 cents on the issue. And you absolutely feel the way you feel, and that's fine. Again, unless you are physically intimidating, bullying, and interfering in people's lives, then honestly, don't listen to this podcast. Because you're not the type of person I want listening as we talk about rock and roll. That'll take us to the breakdown segment. Now, when we get to wrap it up at the end of the show, you will see we are set now. We are good to go all the way through into September after this week. This is going to be the final episode where I had to kind of patch things together and come up with something a little different. Just don't have enough new music yet. It's coming, kids. In a couple weeks, we will definitely have a nice run of new albums for you. But for now, we are going to discuss Queens of the Stone Age here on Breakdown. Of course, Breakdown, our tribute to the late, great Tom Petty and his Heartbreakers. We're going to travel back in time. So I'm going to end up going out to the garage here at the Fortress of Rock a little early. Yes, and Doc Brown's not going to be happy. It's a holiday on top of that. So he's getting paid overtime and holiday pay, which really amounts to nothing. But we're going to start off with the latest release from Queens of the Stone Age. Now, this is a 5-song EP that we've talked about here recently. Alive in the Catacombs. Now, by now you've probably heard there is a movie out, which you can go to the Queens of the Stone Age, go to their website, you can purchase it for streaming. I still have not heard word, I still have not seen if they're going to release it in any kind of a physical format. But to coincide with this movie, they released a limited edition 5-song vinyl EP, and you can, of course, also buy it on digital. The highlights of their performance, which took place in the catacombs underneath Paris, France. Very creepy, very spooky place. Now, don't hold me to this. I'm rattling off as much as I can remember about the background here. I believe the graveyards became too full, and they had to move lots and lots of skeletons, bodies, corpses down underneath the city into the catacombs. So some of the visual stills I've seen are amazing, and yes, a little disturbing. So Josh Homme and his band decided to record down in the catacombs for a different sound, a different feel. Of course, they had to be very careful in terms of how loud they performed, what instruments they used. So this really comes off almost like an episode of MTV Unplugged meets, if you remember the trend, you remember the trend that bands were into, boy, I'd say probably at least 20 years ago now, the symphony orchestra album, the symphony orchestra performances. The Who did it, Metallica did it, Kiss did it, Collective Soul did it. So this kind of brings all of that together for Queens of the Stone Age, where you have to play a little bit quieter. Obviously, you can't plug in the amps and turn them up to 11. So you get more strings involved, more harmony vocals, more acoustic guitar involved. So again, this is where I'm saying it's kind of both of those worlds, the symphony orchestra recordings and the MTV Unplugged recordings kind of coming together here in a very, very unique environment. But we're not reviewing the movie, we're not reviewing the film, we're just reviewing the 5-song EP to start here. Now, these songs obviously have all been previously released, and they did an interesting job here of covering a lot of different territory when it comes to albums. First track on Alive in the Catacombs, the EP, is a medley of Running Joke and Paper Machete. Now, Running Joke was a bonus track not released on the initial release of Era Vulgaris. And then, of course, Paper Machete was off the last QOTSA album, In Times New Roman. And yes, right away you get the strings, you get the vocal harmonies, and it took me a couple listens for this one to really sink in, and I did enjoy this as the lead-off track. Very, very cool. Once we get through all 5 songs, and of course we're doing everything, as always, here on the Fortress of Rock, track by track. Once we get through these 5 songs, I will give you an overview and some observations, both good and bad, of Alive in the Catacombs. Then track 2 is Collapsia, which is a track from Like Clockwork. The strings are much more intense on this song. Overall, it's decent. Not great, not terrible. Track 3 is probably the weakest of the 5. Villains of Circumstance off of course, the album Villains. I swear there's keyboards on this one. And I've told you guys, I can never tell anymore if it's keyboards, if it's strings, because you can play the keyboards and, of course, program in any sound you want. But I think Villains of Circumstance ends up being the least effective of these 5 songs. And luckily, things pick up a little bit at the end. Of course, when I say pick up, I don't mean necessarily tempo-wise, because they're limited on what they can do. But track 4 is Suture Up Your Future, which of course is again off Era Vulgaris. This one's a little bit better. A little bit better. Not quite as good as Running Joke and Paper Machete, but you get a little bit of bass in here from what I can hear. And again, you get what I think are keyboards, which get a little heavy, especially towards the end. So kind of keeps it from being really, truly great to just pretty good. And then finally, off of my personal favorite Queens of the Stone Age album, Lullabies to Paralyze, the best song, I think, on this whole EP is I Never Came. And this is where I'm going to kind of bring together all the different feelings that I have about this. I Never Came is a song, if you listen to the original from Lullabies to Paralyze, this song fits perfectly for what they're trying to do here. The feel of the song, the tempo of the song, the tempo of the original lends itself very well to a little bit more quieter version. Again, with the strings, with the harmonies. And that's why this one stands out above all the other songs here. So here's my problem with Alive in the Catacombs. I admire the ambition. I admire the creativity that goes into this. That they come up with this idea to go into the catacombs. Unbelievably creative, brilliant idea. I'm not trying to take anything away from Josh Homme, anything from his group, his people who came up with this brilliant idea. But I was never, number one, a fan of either the MTV Unplugged era or the era where all these bands wanted to play with symphony orchestras. It's just not something I care about. Sometimes it worked. On occasion, you'd get a version of a song that was a little bit interesting, a little bit different. But they were never better. The symphony orchestra versions, the unplugged versions, for the most part, were never better than the original versions. What is the most famous, notable song from the Unplugged era? It's Nirvana covering David Bowie's The Man Who Sold the World, right? Am I mistaken here? So it wasn't even them reinterpreting one of their own songs. It was a cover song from somebody else. The other problem I have with this is there's a reason why, and I hate to reference Van Halen because everybody knows that's my favorite band ever. Always has been, going back to the late 70s, always will be. And if there's another band out there that's going to usurp Van Halen, bring them on, because I don't have that much time left on this world. Do you notice how Van Halen never really got involved with the unplugged stuff or the orchestral stuff? Do you notice that? Because I believe Eddie Van Halen cared about his vision for his band. He wasn't going to get suckered into these marketing ploys, these ways to resuscitate a career. What was it? Eric Clapton really had his career brought back into the limelight again when he did Unplugged. And in ways, I hate to be cynical, but you know I am, they're cheap money grabs. They really are. They're really cheap money grabs. But you've got Van Halen who never did this. Van Halen was all about the guitar work first and foremost. Yes, they had dynamic, charismatic lead singers, but first and foremost, it was about the guitar. The strength of the guitar work, obviously, the riffs, the hooks, the solos. And to a certain extent, I can say the same thing about Queens of the Stone Age. So why would you want to take away your main strength? And we're going to talk about that a little more as we shift over to reviewing their first album, their debut album, here in a few minutes. But why would you want to take away your main strength? I don't know if you'd call that arrogance, naivete, but I think when you do that, and again, I'm going to say this is why Van Halen never branched out into either the unplugged or the orchestral stuff, is because Eddie knew, the band knew that the guitar was the strength, the thundering drums, the bass, Mikey's bass, the loud, howling vocals of either David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar. So why would you, the riff-heavy stoner rock band that Queens of the Stone Age are, why would you want to take away your main strength, the guitar riffs, the hooks? I think that is the major weakness and the major flaw here with Alive in the Catacombs. While I admire some of the creativity involved here, the creative leaps that they have taken, I don't think it necessarily works given who the band is. So in that sense, I cannot recommend Alive in the Catacombs unless you are a die-hard Queens of the Stone Age fan. Obviously, if you are, you're going to listen to it. I'm a big Queens of the Stone Age fan, and I just, again, don't understand, outside of this being a little bit of a marketing ploy, albeit a very creative, different one, from just doing an unplugged set or doing a set with an orchestra. I just don't understand the motivation here. I would have much rather have heard some new music than for them to go down this path. So again, I cannot recommend Alive in the Catacombs. If you are a huge QOTSA fan, I'm sure you'll give it a shot. And then if you want to drop me a comment, drop me a line on the Facebook page to dispute me, that's fine. I'm all for that. Differences of opinions, again, free speech, I'm all good with it. Let me know. And sometimes when I read somebody's opinion, whether it's about music or movies or TV shows, they might pick up on something that I missed. So I'm always willing to learn. But don't just send a comment saying, "You're wrong, this is awesome." Tell me why. Explain to me why it's awesome. Details matter. So now we're going to wander out to the garage here at the Fortress of Rock and get Doc Brown, angry, mean Doc Brown, working overtime, holiday time, taking us out into the rock and roll time stream a little bit early. We're not ready for I Want to Go Back yet, but we're going to go back in time and review the first album, the very first album from Queens of the Stone Age. All right, so now we're going to look at the difference between what we had just now with Queens of the Stone Age Alive in the Catacombs and what we travel back in time. Doc Brown and I are in the rock and roll DeLorean, working a little earlier than normal here, and I've told him this will be the last time we do this for a while, maybe. We're going to go all the way back to the Queens of the Stone Age first album, self-titled debut album. Now, this is going to take some explaining. I might have made a mistake. I always think that you go for more. If you get bonus tracks, if you get extra tracks, if you get an expanded edition, why not listen to the extra stuff, right? Now, I knew there were two different versions, two different releases of the debut album from Queens of the Stone Age. Both of them have racy covers, okay? Not suitable for the kids. One has more of a kind of a space age themey thing going on where you've got, yes, a topless woman on the cover. And then the other release, which has a few extra tracks, is another racy cover with a woman with lingerie on, pearls dangling down from her neck. Let's just say that neither one is really suitable for your kids. But here, in terms of the music, is where we're going to have a little bit of a divergence. After listening to, I listened to the one with the lingerie and the pearls. Let's call it that. That's the cover. The lingerie and the pearls. Which is 14 tracks long. It runs roughly an hour. After listening to that, and that's what we're going to review here this week on the Fortress of Rock, and then looking at the track list for the 11-song release, which is the Space Age cover release, we'll call it that, I think I would have preferred the 45-minute Space Age cover release. Now, once I get through the 14 songs here, again, we're going to do it track by track. I'll explain to you which ones were cut out or left out of the other release and why that would have probably made things better. So we start off with Queens of the Stone Age. Regular John is the first track. And again, we're dealing with a band in its formative years. Josh Homme had formed Queens of the Stone Age out of the ashes of Kyuss. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Kyuss was the band that he was in before Queens of the Stone Age. And if you listen to any of Kyuss, which I have, you can hear the growth pattern, the curve, the growth curve coming from that band and then into this first effort from QOTSA. So Regular John is a good song, but not a great song. But what you're going to notice throughout this album, if you listen to it, and I will recommend this album, But again, maybe not the version I listened to. Very riff heavy album. And that's again why I don't understand with Alive in the Catacombs why you would take out your one glaring awesome strength. Why you would weaken your band like that. Because this album, the first Queens of the Stone Age album, is chock full of crunchy, tasty, hypnotic riffs. And that is the strength of this album. So you go from regular John to Avon, which is very similar in terms of very good song, not a great song, but the riffs are there. The riffs are going to pull you in. They are going to hypnotize you. They're repetitive at times, but when they're so good, do you really care? Now we get to track 3, If Only. And to me, this is a little bit of foreshadowing for what is to come in the future from Queens of the Stone Age when they achieved greater heights of success. If Only is probably, in terms of this whole album, the biggest precursor to their more accessible, I don't want to say poppy stuff, but things like Little Sister, maybe to a certain extent No One Knows, off of Lullabies to Paralyze. If Only is trying to be Queens of the Stone Age, doing their best to put together a radio hit, even though they'll never really fully conform to that type of format, if you understand what I'm saying. If Only is the catchiest song on the album in terms of a straightforward rock song with a little tiny bit of pop influence in it. Now track 4, Walking on the Sidewalks, is where I think you get your first taste of the Queens of the Stone Age that I love. The heavy, slightly quirky, ultimately awesomely creative band that they ended up becoming. They did lose me, though, at the end. They really needed to cut about 30 seconds off the ending because the ending is so drawn out that it goes beyond being hypnotic into just boring. So a little bit of judicious editing here would have helped at the end of Walking on the Sidewalks, but otherwise, a great song. Track 5, You Would Know. This falls squarely into the category of stoner rock. That floating, weird, goofy riff kind of tune that just meanders out there in a cloud of your favorite illicit narcotic, I guess. Whatever you want to call it, stoner rock, desert rock, I've heard it called. It's not terrible, but up to this point on the album, it's the weakest song. Then we get track 6, The Bronze, and that kind of supplants You Would Know as the weakest song, although it's close. It's close. The Bronze, again, not an exceptional tune, a little bit more in the stoner rock category. But this leads into, and this song, track 7, I would recommend the album just for this song. This is how great this song is, and I am shocked at myself for never delving into this album to the point where I heard this song in the past. Now, it's got a wild title, and a lot of the songs from here on out have very odd, very wild titles. How to Handle a Rope, subtitled A Lesson in the Lariat. This could arguably be one of the top 5 Queens of the Stone Age songs ever. And I'm still shocked that I've somehow missed this up until a few weeks ago when I finally started to listen to this album. This song is phenomenal. I mean, incredible. This is prime, grade A Queens of the Stone Age, kids. This is the band that we end up getting later on, more consistently. An unbelievable riff interplaying with the drum beats. It's just amazing. I don't know how I can describe it to you other than you've got to listen to this song. Far and away, the best song on the album, and again, one of the top 5 Queens of the Stone Age songs ever. Again, How to Handle a Rope, subtitled A Lesson in the Lariat. If this wasn't an old album, if this was a new album, this song would easily be my top song of the year. Easily. Not even a doubt in my mind. Halfway through the year. But alas and alack, it's old. That leads us into track 8, Mexicola, with a nice little wicked bass intro. Mexicola is more in line with your traditional Queens of the Stone Age stuff that we're used to. Very good song. Liked it very much. Then the album starts to fall apart and becomes more filler than actual worthwhile content. Track 9 is the first of 3 instrumentals that we have to endure on the second half of the album. Hispanic Impressions. Okay, maybe it's fitting coming after Mexicola, but it's still just a very blah, ordinary instrumental. Then track 10 at least brings us back to some good regular Queens of the Stone Age stuff. A Glorious Mess, with another great bass intro. You Can't Quit Me, Baby. Very good song. But then we segue right back into another instrumental. Great title. These Aren't the Droids You're Looking For. Not very good at all. And this is where the album really starts to slide backwards, because now we're starting to get goofy, weird, space age beeps and boops and just odd sound effects that detract from the music. Now, the last good song on the album is track 12, Give the Mule What He Wants. Another great bass intro. A nice galloping little beat to the song, propulsive beat. So Give the Mule What He Wants, again, very good song, but the last 2 songs are worthless. I mean worthless. The instrumental, track 13, Spiders and Vinegaroons, with what sounds at one point like hand claps, and it goes on for over 6 minutes. No, thank you. No, 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 thank you. And then finally, you're thinking, well, at least we're going to get one more regular song, right? With a great title. The final track, track 14, is I Was a Teenage Hand Model. No, this is awful. Weird keyboard sounds that, sorry, if you're listening with your kids, they might giggle here. Keyboard sounds that really sound like farts. Yes, more weird space age odd sound effects that just have no place here. So definitely the second half of the album lacking compared to the first half. Now, overall, this version, the 14-track version, I will still recommend, but it is a weak recommendation because there is a lot of filler, again, on the second half of the album. Here's where we need to discuss the other version of this album, the 11-song version. And again, this is the one with the space age weird cover with the naked woman, not the one with the woman in lingerie and the pearls, okay, which is the one I just reviewed. The 11-song version takes out two of the instrumentals. It takes out These Aren't the Droids You're Looking For, and it takes out Spiders and Vinegaroons. Now, along with that, it takes out the Bronze from the first half of the album. That might be a sacrifice I'm willing to make. It cuts the album's runtime down from 60 minutes down to 45, roughly. The album is much tighter, much better without those two instrumentals. Now, I personally think if you'd have kept the Bronze and gotten rid of I Was a Teenage Hand Model, close the whole thing out with Give the Mule What He Wants, you'd been looking at one of the greatest debut albums of the last 30 years. As it is, I just mentioned, a tepid recommendation for the 14-song version of the debut album from Queens of the Stone Age. If you want to listen to the 11-song version, it'll probably be a little better. But again, they kept one of the instrumentals. They kept the worthless I Was a Teenage Hand Model. So it's not like the 11-song version is worlds better. It's better, but it's still not as good as it could have been. But definitely, the debut album, either version, definitely better than Alive in the Catacombs. Now, that's a 5-song EP. For the last time, I'll say it, why would you take your strength away from your band and think you are going to create something mesmerizing and fantastic? I just don't get the thought patterns there. But that is going to do it for Breakdown. Thanks for hanging with me as we talked a lot of the Queens of the Stone Age. I think I did this because I was bitter about the fact that I was supposed to see them last year, and Josh Homme got sick, definitely had to have some medical attention, and then we had to bail on the rescheduled date, which was just a few weeks ago. You know, my friends had stuff going on they couldn't get out of, and I understand it, but still very, very bitter about that. And I always will be. When I miss out on a concert, especially when it's a band I've never seen before, I will be very bitter. But you guys have been listening now for 200 episodes. That's no shock, no surprise, right? Well, we're in the rock and roll time stream, so guess what? A very easy segue to segment 3 here. I want to go back, our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. Of course, segment 3 every week revolves around anniversaries of classic album releases, birthdays, and significant moments in rock and roll history. I know we're already up to speed, 1.21 gigawatts, 88 miles per hour, but I still have to take care of some business real quick. Doc, you're getting paid overtime and holiday pay. Stop giving me the stink eye. All right? You found us somewhere, and I thank you for that. But you have options and you have choices. You can find the Fortress of Rock every Friday night with new episodes on Spotify, Good Pods, Pocket Cast, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. You can also check out the Facebook page. No, we're not on Instagram yet. I don't know if we'll ever get on X or TikTok. But the Facebook page is what we set up initially to try to promote the podcast. It works for what we need it to do, where we can link episodes in a different way, a different manner to you. Try to make it as easy as possible for you to find the Fortress of Rock. And then we do fun stuff on the weekends. Tonight, July the 4th. Again, we're doing this just a few hours earlier than normal. And we've already dropped the Weekend Rock Project every Friday night. We give you on our Facebook page a word, a phrase, an idea, a theme, and your job, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to come back with your greatest, your best, your favorite rock songs that fit that word, that theme, that phrase, that category. Tonight, very simple. One of the easiest weekend rock projects ever, and I am astounded that we have not done this one yet, since we've been doing the Weekend Rock Project since 2021. Yes, we've been doing the Weekend Rock Project pretty much as long as we've been doing the Fortress of Rock. Tonight, very simple. Now, this is a multi-week Weekend Rock Project. So something next week will be coming that is tied into this. So maybe not quite as simple as you would think, but this weekend, definitely very simple. We ask, are you in or are you out? Yes, that's it. In, out. Those two words. Now, I only want those two words. Nothing, no variations, don't play any games, don't play any tricks with this. This is very simple. And if you do not follow the rules, I will disregard your submission. In, out. Those two words. That's it. Again, no variations. No cutesy little tricky games, okay? Maybe next week I'll let you play some cutesy tricky games, but not this week. For example, my two early submissions, because I still think this is extremely easy, I grabbed two songs, both with double points. Van Halen's In and Out, Bon Jovi's In and Out of Love. See? Plenty of songs to choose from. But can you come up with something really creative? Double points, triple points. Songs that maybe we haven't heard in a long time. Not just the big generic hits. So, that is your Weekend Rock Project out there right now on the Fortress of Rock Facebook page. And then this coming Sunday, I, of course, will drop a video, a lyric video, a visualizer, a fully produced video for a brand new song. Yeah, since the Foo Fighters seem to be the running link here between this entire show from segment to segment, I'm saying 99% sure that your New Music Sunday, this Sunday afternoon on the Fortress of Rock Facebook page, will be today's song by the Foo Fighters. Unless something drastically changes. I don't see that happening. Friday, I've already looked. I don't see a lot of new music. Where are you, Wolfgang Van Halen? I need another new song from Mammoth. So check out our Facebook page this Sunday as well for New Music Sunday. Now we will get into, I want to go back. Again, we're rushing to get this done ahead of the fireworks. It's very gloomy and cloudy outside, so people are already, I can hear it. The villagers nearby already shooting off fireworks, even though it's not even close to sunset yet. So we're going to try to get this all wrapped up and done before all the fireworks, the Roman candles, the firecrackers going boom, 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 end up drowning out my mellifluous voice. Birthdays here on July the 4th. Who has patriotic birthdays here in the world of rock and roll and music in general? We will start off with July the 4th, 1995. Oh my goodness. This man's only 30 years old. Not technically rock and roll. Post Malone. Post Malone, born on this day in 1995. Again, 30 years old today. Jeez. And what he's already accomplished at the age of 30. Born on this day, July the 4th, 1972. Yeah, guess what? It's another Foo Fighters reference. Many more coming. William Goldsmith, born on this day in 1972. Who, you might ask, is William Goldsmith? And what is his connection to the Foo Fighters, Maestro? He was technically, I mean, you could say Dave Grohl, but William Goldsmith was technically the first drummer for the Foo Fighters. He was with the band from 1994 through 1997. Which encompassed, I believe, the first tour, and then he was involved in the recording of the second album. I believe he left right before the tour for the second album. That would have been, if I am not mistaken, The Color and the Shape. Born on this day, July the 4th, 1963. Matt Malley. Matt Malley was the bass player for the Counting Crows through their most significant, commercially successful period, 1991 through 2005. Born on this day, also July the 4th, 1963, Michael Sweet. Michael Sweet, of course, frontman, leader, co-founder for Stryper. To Hell with the Devil. For those of you who love your Christian hard rock. Born on this day, July the 4th, 1958. Kirk Pengilly. This is a band I really miss. This is a band I really, really miss. They had so much more to give. And of course, their lead singer tragically, some say accidentally, killed himself. That, of course, would be Michael Hutchence. Kirk Pengilly, guitar player for In Excess. Born on this day, July the 4th, 1952. John Waite. Of course, a varied career. Solo artist, of course, with the massive hit Missing You. Lead singer for The Babies. Lead singer for Bad English. Now, I prefer to remember the good moments with John Waite, where his bands would rock out, but unfortunately, he is known most for sappy, miserable ballads. John Waite, born on this day in 1952. Born on this day, July the 4th, 1951. Drummer for Earth, Wind, and Fire, Ralph Johnson. Band I've never gotten to see live, would love to see them. And then finally, born on this day, July the 4th, 1938. The awesome, smooth voice, Bill Withers. Lean on Me. Bill Withers, born on this day in 1938. So now we move on to anniversaries for July the 4th. An odd transition here as we move from the great vocals of Bill Withers to the deep, deep baritone vocals, the sexy vocals of Barry White. Unfortunately, though, yes, we've shifted from birthdays to anniversaries, so our first anniversary, July the 4th, 2003, Barry White passed away. Can't get enough of your love, baby. Yeah, sorry. No, I cannot even come close to doing Barry White justice. On this day, July the 4th, 1999. Kind of odd, considering July the 4th is, of course, American Independence Day from Great Britain, yet a couple of Britain's finest celebrities were married, and they're still together 26 years later. On this day, July the 4th, 1999, Victoria Adams, otherwise known as Posh Spice of the Spice Girls, married soccer superstar David Beckham. Hey, more Foo Fighters stuff for you, kids. Remember how we talked at the beginning of the episode about how this is the 30th anniversary of the Foo Fighters? We weren't lying, because on this day, July the 4th, 1995, yes, 30 years ago, the self-titled debut album from the Foo Fighters was released. And rock and roll would never be the same again. Yes, I do love me some Foo Fighters. Not so much lately. And it's got nothing to do with judging Dave Grohl. It's more about the quality of the music. But the first, half dozen albums, tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. On this day, July the 4th, 1986, another very, very important event in the world of music, melding with the world of rap. Dare I say the most significant event when it comes to those two worlds colliding. On this day in 1986, Run DMC released their version of Aerosmith's Walk This Way. And of course, Steven Tyler and Joe Perry appeared in the video, helped them out. It was a mammoth mega hit. And yes, again, the world of music would never be the same again. On this day, July the 4th, 1982, we just talked about a long-lasting marriage between Posh Spice and David Beckham. Here's one that's lasted even longer, but I've got to believe there were a lot more bumps in the road here along the way. On this day in 1982, and again, we're talking about people from over the pond getting married on Independence Day in America. Just odd. Ozzy Osbourne, on this day in 1982, married Sharon Arden. Yes, now we know her as Sharon Osbourne. At the time, that was his manager. I do believe she's still his manager today. Don't quote me on that, though. I'm not sure what kind of arrangement they have now. On this day, July the 4th, 1976, the live debut for The Clash in Sheffield, England, opening up for the Sex Pistols. And then finally, in our anniversaries, on this day, July the 4th, 1964, and this seems to be a band we're talking about every week here recently, for good and for bad. This is good. On this day in 1964, the Beach Boys had the number one single in the United States with I Get Around. And it was the band's first U.S. number one song. So there you go, kids. I can finally get Doc Brown back home as we turn around and head out of the rock and roll time stream. Pull the rock and roll DeLorean back into the garage here at the Fortress of Rock. Close up the garage. Pull up the drawbridge over the moat. We don't want anything happening to the DeLorean. We don't want any fireworks, ashes, sparks damaging the beautiful paint job on our rock and roll DeLorean. So we're going to lock things up here at the Fortress of Rock. I'm going to head back into the studio for our fourth and final segment, which of course is Wrap It Up, our tribute to the fabulous Thunderbirds. I mentioned earlier, very, very excited. I love when we can set up every episode, lock it down for weeks and weeks and weeks out. And finally, it seems like for the first time in a long, long time, maybe for the first time this year, we can go 6 weeks out right now and tell you we've got something awesome and new lined up every week, every Friday here on the Fortress of Rock, starting next week. Bruce Springsteen, Lost and Found, selections from the Lost Albums, which of course is that massive 7-album CD box set. Tracks 2, as it's otherwise known as, 20 songs in the condensed best of version. Yes, I finally did get my hands on the physical copy. Some great people, some awesome people out there in Spotify, not people who work for Spotify, but fans have put together a playlist or 2 or 10 or 20 or 100 of this Lost and Found collection, so I can listen to it on Spotify now. No thanks to Bruce Springsteen and Spotify. But that's okay. I got the physical version last Saturday. We will review the full 20-song best of set, Lost and Found, encompassing all 7 of these albums. Couple songs from each. 3 from each, actually, except one gets shorted. Only gets 2. That's how you come up with 20 songs. That is our feature review next week here on the Fortress of Rock in the Breakdown segment. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention when we were out in the rock and roll time stream, I have help. I have sources that give me ideas, especially for segment 1, News of the World, and segment 3, I Want to Go Back. I would be remiss if I did not thank UltimateClassicRock.com, ThisDayInMusic.com, and when we have Van Halen news, the Van Halen Newsdesk.com. So next week, Bruce Springsteen. 2 weeks out, our first concert review finally, over halfway through the year. And in a way, this is me protesting. I've told you, I am not happy with this garbage Live Nation is pulling, trying to gouge their fans, dynamic concession pricing, on top of dynamic ticket pricing, on top of now charging for parking at venues where there are no other options. Greedy, greedy, greedy. So that's why finally it's taken us this long, for the first time ever, 6.5 months into the year, to finally get a concert. And yes, we're not going anywhere near Live Nation or Ticketmaster venues. But in 2 weeks, we will review Quiet Riot and Aldo Nova live. That will be episode 203 on July the 18th. In 3 weeks, episode 204 dropping on July the 25th, we're looking at possibly a double review for you. I think I mentioned this last week. Don't want to fall too far behind. If I keep pushing stuff back, because this is what stinks. You know, we can go 3 or 4 weeks earlier this year with nothing, and now we get a backlog already on the horizon. And we don't want to push stuff too far down the road, because then it becomes old and irrelevant. Kind of like my daughter would say about me. But in 3 weeks, the brand new album from Styx, Circling from Above, on episode 204, dropping July the 25th, but along with Styx. We will also be reviewing the 2-part Billy Joel HBO Max documentary, And So It Goes. So we will have a very, very full, awesome episode with a lot of new stuff to discuss. In 3 weeks, once again, Styx, Circling from Above, along with the Billy Joel documentary, And So It Goes. In 4 weeks, the brand new album from Bush, I Beat Loneliness, will be featured on episode 205, dropping on August the 1st. In 5 weeks, the brand new album from Honeymoon Suite, Wake Me Up When the Sun Goes Down, will be our featured review, episode 206, on August the 8th. And then in 6 weeks, I told you, kids, the slate is full all the way through into September. In 6 weeks, our second concert review of 2025, episode 207 on August the 15th, will feature the double bill of Great White and Slaughter. So we are rolling again. We are rocking and rolling like nobody's business. So no more overtime work for Doc Brown in reviewing old albums. I'm sure we'll have to revisit that again at some point, but still, now we're getting some new music. And then, of course, later on, we've got more concerts. We've still got Piercy and DeMartini. We've still got Shinedown and Bush. We've got David Lee Roth. And then we've got the new album from The Hives. So, like I said, we are covered well into September with new music and concert reviews, new albums. Now, as far as new songs go, we're going to be reviewing a few new songs here over the next week or two, but I will admit it's a weak crop of songs. Except, of course, maybe, possibly for, yes, once again, for the final time. Well, no, not yet. Not the final time. Probably next week. I would say there's a 95% chance, a 95% certainty we will review the new Foo Fighters song, Today's Song, next week. And I mentioned I have had my misgivings about some of their new music over the last few years, and Today's Song is no exception. We'll get into it next week when I review it. There's something lyrically that bothers me about this song. And there was a song a few weeks ago, can't remember off the top of my head, but there was another song that bothered me lyrically. And we'll probably reference that song along with my review of Today's Song by the Foo Fighters next week. Judas Priest could not be at Back to the Beginning. Again, tomorrow night, as we record here on July the 4th, over the pond. Back to the Beginning, of course, the final performance, the celebration of Black Sabbath. Judas Priest could not be there, so they have put out a new version, a cover song of War Pigs. We will discuss that probably next week to coincide with our look back at what we hear, what we read about how Back to the Beginning actually went. The performances, the reviews, all that good stuff. We're still looking at the new song from Airborne, Gutsy, and the third single from Honeymoon Suite. Since that review is still 5 weeks out, I think we're safe reviewing the third single next week, Ever Leave You Lonely. And as I've said, I'm waiting for the next release from Mammoth. Mr. Van Halen, let's get it going, okay? I'm getting a little tired of seeing these emails all the time about your tour with Miles Kennedy, which you're nowhere near me. I would love to give you my money. So the least you could do is release a new song for me, or at least give us more details about the third album from Mammoth. But I'm not bitter. Who could ever call me bitter? I'm the lovable, huggable, cuddly Maestro. And now, what do we have left? We have our tribute to the Billboard charts. Back when they mattered. Back when they were actually somewhat accurate. Back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and early 90s, before SoundScan, and then before streaming absolutely destroyed everything. So what do? We have to run everything. Everything involving music, the Maestro, the Fortress of Rock, we should be running it. So we're going to run the charts. We have our weekly charts now. No, we're not going to list off 200 albums or 100 songs, but you're going to get each and every Friday afternoon / evening the top album here on the Fortress of Rock and the top few songs for the week. This, of course, is subjective. This is the stuff I'm listening to. This is the stuff I like. This is the stuff I think you would like. That's the most important part. As far as our number one album this week, I am, yes, going to go with the EP. Even though I was not a huge fan of it, I didn't hate it, and it was by far the album or EP I listened to most this week. So number one on our album chart this week is Alive in the Catacombs, from Queens of the Stone Age. This is kind of more of a nod, a cumulative nod, to how much I have been listening to them lately. Between Alive in the Catacombs, their debut album, which we reviewed earlier, I've also delved into Era Vulgaris a little bit, and Lullabies to Paralyze, so this is kind of like a week-long achievement award for Queens of the Stone Age. And then the top songs this week. Of course, I always pick two. Two is better than one. Yes, even though I have mentioned I might have some lyrical misgivings about it, today's song by the Foo Fighters is one of our top songs this week. And we're also going back a few months, even though I'm complaining beyond belief about Mammoth. I'm still listening to the first new song, the first single from their upcoming album, The End by Mammoth. So to recap, your top album this week is an EP, Alive in the Catacombs by Queens of the Stone Age, and your top songs this week on the Fortress of Rock are The End by Mammoth and today's song by the Foo Fighters. And that will do it for the Fortress of Rock here on Independence Day, the 4th of July, 2025, as we kick off a year-long celebration, the 250th birthday, anniversary, whatever you want to call it, of the United States of America. You know what we could do this year to really make things awesome and this celebration spectacular beyond belief? Stop with the garbage on social media, the hatred, the vitriol. Stop complaining about politics. You get one vote, use it, and if things don't turn out your way, suck it up, deal with it. Let's be one country, unified. I am so tired of winebags, crybabies on either side of the political fence. Shut up, vote for who you want, and then after the results come through, that's it. Support whoever's in charge as best you can, and then the next time Election Day rolls around, use your one vote and do it all over again. That's how we can celebrate the 250th birthday of this country. Effectively, stop with the partisan bickering, nastiness, and violence. I am the Maestro Kevin Crane. You are who you are, and we love you for it. Thank you very much for checking out another audacious, outrageous, fantastic episode of the Fortress of Rock. Have a great, safe 4th of July. Do not blow off any appendages, please. Take care of the little ones. Make sure they don't get close to any fireworks they're not supposed to be around. You're the adult in the room. You take care of them. Okay? Don't leave them wandering around with Roman candles, M80s, while you have to go grab another adult beverage. That's not how it works. You're the adult. Okay? Hug those children. Keep them close. Love the ones you're with. Once again, I am the Maestro Kevin Crane, the Ayatollah of rock and rolla. Have a great long weekend. And we'll do this all again in 7 days, kids, with Bruce Springsteen's Lost and Found collection as our featured album review. But until then, peace out.